I never thought a simple trip to the grocery store could unravel my entire life. My name is Jenna, a 32-year-old single mother of two, navigating the chaotic world of parenthood while working a dead-end job. To the outside world, I appeared as the devoted mom, making pancakes on Saturday mornings and wearing my heart on my sleeve. But beneath that facade, I was drowning in desperation and loneliness, a feeling that clung to me like stale air in the store's freezer aisle. It started on a Tuesday evening, the fluorescent lights buzzing as I pushed my cart past aisles of bright packaging and the faint scent of overripe bananas. I was exhausted, having just put the kids to bed, and the thought of cooking made my stomach churn. As I wandered aimlessly, I noticed a man leaning against the cold metal shelving, his eyes scanning the rows of cereal. He looked rough around the edges, with a scruffy beard and a worn-out jacket, the kind of guy you'd normally avoid. Yet something about him intrigued me. His indifference and raw vulnerability pulled me in. We exchanged glances, and soon we were sharing jokes over ridiculous cereal mascots. I felt a thrill I hadn't experienced in years, a rush that swept away the mundane weight of my daily life. It was exhilarating, pure, intoxicating. We shared insights, our laughter echoing through the aisles, a stark contrast to the sterile atmosphere. I felt alive as he leaned in closer, his breath warm and tinged with an unrecognizable scent, a mix of sweat and desperation. As our conversation deepened, I realized I was standing on the brink of something reckless. Amidst the pasta and canned beans, I felt a desire clawing at my insides. My heart raced, and for a moment I forgot the responsibilities waiting at home. I invited him for coffee, a seemingly innocent gesture that spiraled into a dangerous decision. We stepped outside, the chill of the evening air prickling my skin as I led him to my car. The engine hummed softly, but it was the tension between us that filled the space. We drove to a secluded parking lot, far from the prying eyes of neighbors. The mix of adrenaline and guilt twisted my stomach into knots. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears as I turned to him, my breath hitching at the thought of what I was about to do. I didn't even know his name. It didn't matter. The thrill of the unknown consumed me, drowning out the small voice in my head screaming for reason. In that darkened car, we surrendered to the moment, a blend of desperation and longing fueling our actions. The taste of risk lingered on my tongue, sharp and exhilarating as I lost myself in the chaos. Outside, the world continued its rhythm, the distant sounds of traffic and muffled laughter fading into the background. It was just us, tangled in a web of poor choices and fleeting connection, the smell of cheap cologne mixing with the stale air of my car. When it was over, I felt hollow, a pit in my stomach growing deeper. I glanced at him and saw my reflection in his eyes, a mix of shame, exhilaration, and fear of who I had become. He was just a stranger, yet the weight of that encounter felt like a burden I would carry forever. I drove home, the silence deafening, reality crashing in around me like a tidal wave. I parked in front of my house, the lights still on, and the thought of my children sleeping innocently inside twisted the knife deeper. The guilt was a heavy cloak I could not shed. I stepped inside, the scent of their bedtime routine lingering, and felt like a ghost in my own home. How could I look them in the eyes, knowing that I had betrayed not just my commitment to them, but the very essence of who I thought I was? I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by remnants of our nightly routine, and all I could think about was how easily I had crossed a line I once thought I would never approach. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that encounter haunted me, like a dark shadow that refused to fade. I never saw him again, but the ghost of that night lingered, a reminder of my vulnerability and the depths to which I had sunk. I became a prisoner of my own choices, forever marked by a moment of reckless abandon that shattered the illusion of the perfect life I had tried so desperately to maintain.
I never thought I could stoop so low, until I found myself rummaging through the trash behind my neighbor's house. My name is Derek, a regular guy in my late 20s, living in a nondescript suburb where the biggest thrill is watching the mailman's predictable route. I was in a dead-end job, leading an uninspired existence, and my social life had dwindled to awkward exchanges with the barista down the street. One bleak night, driven by boredom and a craving for excitement, I made a fateful choice. The smell hit me first, a rancid blend of spoiled food and rust. I was merely looking for distraction, perhaps a discarded treasure, but what I discovered shook me to my core. It was just after dusk, the sky wore a bruised hue, and the neighbors were blissfully unaware of my descent into the grotesque. As I dug deeper, my hands brushed against something sticky and warm. I recoiled, heart racing, but curiosity pulled me back. Pulling aside a moldy pizza box, I found it. A half-eaten sandwich, still wrapped in greasy plastic. The bread was slightly torn, revealing soggy innards of wilted lettuce and a slice of tomato that had seen better days. My stomach twisted in knots, but the thrill of doing something so utterly wrong ignited a fire in me. I can't explain why I felt compelled to take it. Maybe it was adrenaline or an unquenchable need to feel alive, even in the most repulsive way. I shoved the sandwich into my backpack, the plastic crinkling ominously in the stillness. My heart thudded in my chest as I made my way back to my apartment, the weight of what I had done pressing down on me like the oppressive humidity of the summer night. I didn't even wash my hands before I sat down at my kitchen table, the flickering light bulb casting an eerie glow over my latest conquest. The pungent aroma wafted from the sandwich, a heady mix of decay and desperation. As I peeled back the plastic, excitement mingled with nausea. The sight was grotesque. The bread was speckled with mold, and the lettuce had turned a sickly shade of brown. Still, I was entranced. I took a deep breath, bracing against the wave of revulsion. I didn't just want to eat it, I felt I had to. I took a bite, the texture slimy and gritty against my tongue. The taste of rot flooded my senses. It was disgusting, yet somehow liberating. Each bite was a rebellion against my mundane life. I could feel bile rising in my throat, and I gagged, but I pushed through, forcing myself to swallow. The moment was surreal, hovering on the edge of insanity and thrill. The sandwich was everything I hated yet craved, a chaotic blend of rebellion and shame. The act stripped me bare, exposing the raw parts of my soul longing for something to break the monotony. As the final bite slid down, a strange sense of accomplishment washed over me. The shame, the disgust, it all melded into something almost beautiful. I had crossed the line, a boundary I never thought I would touch. I didn't care about the consequences, the germs, or what anyone would think if they knew. I was free, if only for a fleeting moment. I sat there in silence, the remnants of the sandwich crumpled before me like a grotesque trophy of my audacity. I don't know what happened after that night. It's all a blur of compulsive choices and reckless abandon. Perhaps it was a turning point, or maybe just a moment in an otherwise stagnant life. All I know is that I'll never look at a sandwich or my reflection in the same way again. As I lay in bed that night, the taste lingering on my tongue, I thought about what I had done, and it felt utterly electric.
I never thought I would find myself in this situation, but here I am, trembling as I type. My name is Clara, the quiet girl in the back of the class, who never raised her hand and blended into the wallpaper. But beneath that unassuming exterior lay a tempest of emotions, a longing for something raw, something to break the monotony of my life. I was a freshman at a prestigious university, surrounded by brilliance and ambition, yet I felt an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Little did I know, my desire to feel alive would lead me down an unforeseen path. It started on a gray Tuesday afternoon, the smell of wet asphalt and rain-soaked leaves wafting through my window. Scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon an underground party that weekend. The allure of something illicit called to me, and I decided to go, craving the thrill of stepping outside my comfort zone. When I arrived, the bass reverberated through the air like a heartbeat, and the scent of sweat and cheap cologne enveloped me. The thrill of anonymity felt intoxicating, as if I could be anyone or no one at all. As the night wore on, I found myself in a dimly lit room, the walls pulsing with colors and laughter blending into the music. I let myself be swept away, feeling the weight of my inhibitions lift as I danced, the floor sticky beneath my shoes. Then I met him, Alex. He was magnetic, his eyes glinting with mischief. He pulled me into a corner, whispering secrets into my ear, and I was captivated. My desire to belong morphed into something darker, a reckless abandon fueled by the atmosphere around me. What happened next still haunts me. In a frenzy of adrenaline and poor judgment, we slipped into a bathroom, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air thick with bleach and something else. Regret? We kissed, our bodies pressed together, the cold tiles biting into my back. But it twisted into something grotesque when he suggested we take it a step further. That's when I felt my stomach lurch. It wasn't just the thrill I craved, it was the rawness of the act itself. We stumbled into the stall, the cramped space reeking of urine and stale smoke. I remember the metallic taste of fear mixed with exhilaration as Alex pushed my boundaries further than I could have imagined. The rough edges of the toilet seat dug into my skin, the coldness of the metal contrasting sharply with the heat of his breath against my face. The world outside faded, yet inside that stall, I was hyper-aware of every unsettling detail. The scratchy toilet paper, the flickering light casting shadows, the muffled sounds of laughter just beyond the door. In a moment of reckless abandon, I crossed a line I never meant to. It was raw, primal, and as I surrendered to the moment, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. But it quickly turned sour as the reality of what I was doing crashed down. I was no longer just a passive participant. I was complicit in a shameful act, one that would cling to me like the scent of cheap cologne and sweat. When it was over, I stumbled into the hallway, my heart racing, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and regret. I could barely focus as I navigated through the crowd, the laughter now a cacophony that felt like a cruel reminder of my choices. Desperate to escape, I wanted to wash away the memory, but the stench of that night lingered like a dark cloud. The thrill I sought had morphed into something grotesque, revealing my own vulnerability. I sat in my dorm room for days, the walls closing in as shame suffocated me. The thrill had turned to self-loathing, and the darkness I had chased became a constant companion, whispering secrets into my ears. I couldn't escape the reality of what I'd done, and nor shake the feeling that I had crossed an invisible line, one that would forever alter how I viewed myself. The mirror reflected a stranger, a girl craving validation, yet tangled in a web of her own making. I never went back to those parties. I never reached out to Alex again. The echo of that night became a haunting refrain, a reminder of a choice made in a haze of desperation. Now, as I reflect, I am left with the weight of my own shame, a silent confession to a world that may never understand what it means to lose oneself in the pursuit of feeling alive.
I still can't shake the image of her face as I pushed her away, the betrayal etched in her eyes. I was never the best kid, always the quiet, awkward one in the back of the classroom, invisible until someone needed a scapegoat. I grew up in a small Midwest town where the air carried the scent of freshly tilled earth and manure from nearby farms. Gossip traveled faster than wildfire, and reputations could crumble with a whispered word. My only escape was art. The paintbrush was my solace. I poured my emotions into vibrant canvases, but it wasn't until that fateful night that I learned how far I could go to feel alive. It started innocently enough. A group of us around a fire pit in my backyard, flames casting flickering shadows on our faces. Laughter rang out, punctuated by the crackling wood and clinking beer cans. I was 15, feeling the weight of teenage angst like a thick fog. As the night wore on, we played truth or dare, pushing each other's boundaries, daring one another to reveal secrets and take risks. That's when Sarah, my best friend since childhood, dared me to do something I never thought I'd consider. "Go kiss Adam," she said, her voice teasing yet challenging. Adam was the popular guy, the one all the girls crushed on. My heart raced, but there was a thrill in the challenge. I laughed with confidence, but as I approached him, doubt flooded through me. Yet I leaned in, our lips brushing together for a split second before I pulled back, feeling exhilarated. But the moment didn't linger. The mood shifted. The laughter faded, replaced by uncomfortable tension. I felt Sarah's eyes piercing through me, disbelief morphing into jealousy as she glared at me. The air grew thick with unspoken words, and for the first time I tasted bitterness. Just as I was about to brush it off, she challenged me again, her voice dripping with contempt. "Why don't you dare to be as bold in real life?" In a flash of anger, I spiraled. I didn't care anymore. I dared to cross a line I never thought I would. I grabbed a can of spray paint from the shed, a rebellious glint lighting up my eyes. Fueled by a twisted need for excitement, I began to spray graffiti on the side of my dad's barn. The pungent smell filled the air, mixing with the earthy scent of the night. The colors splashed wildly, chaotic strokes mirroring the storm inside my mind. As my friends cheered, something primal ignited within me. I felt unstoppable until I noticed Sarah stepping back, her face pale. The laughter faded into a murmur as the realization of my actions hit me. I turned to find her staring at me, disbelief morphing into rage. She lunged forward, pushing against my shoulders, trying to stop me. I shoved her away. The force of my desperation surprised us both. She stumbled, her back hitting the barn wall with a sickening thud. Panic rushed in, quickly drowned by adrenaline. In that moment, as she lay stunned, I was consumed by a twisted sense of power. I wanted to be unforgettable. The darkness within me relished the chaos I had created. I continued spraying, ignoring her cries, the sound blending into the background of my distorted thrill. When the adrenaline faded, her sobs broke through my haze. I turned, the reality of what I had done crashing down like a heavy weight on my chest. She looked so small, vulnerable, and I felt an overwhelming compulsion to run. I didn't say a word as I fled the scene, my clammy hands feeling foreign against the cold night air. The next day, whispers circulated through the school like wildfire, each story more exaggerated than the last. I felt the weight of judgment pressing down on me. I thought about Sarah, her betrayal and the look in her eyes, but I never reached out. I couldn't bear the shame. The guilt twisted inside me, a constant reminder of that night, a secret locked away in the shadows of my mind. The thrill was gone, replaced by an emptiness that settled deep within me, and I never felt quite whole again.
I never thought I'd find myself crouched in the corners of my own mind, but here I am, wrestling with a truth so grotesque it makes my skin crawl. Growing up in a small Ohio town where everyone knew each other's business meant my secrets felt like a ticking bomb. I'm a 32-year-old who, on the surface, seemed like the model citizen, a dedicated teacher, and a respected community member. Yet inside, I was a tightly wound coil ready to snap. The day it happened, I stood in the school hallway, the scent of old textbooks and disinfectant swirling around me, mingling with the faint whiff of stale lunch that lingered in the air. I had just finished a meeting with parents, discussing their son's struggles, his innocent laughter ringing in my ears. But all I could think about was the dark, gnawing feeling festering within. That evening, my frustration boiled over. Alone at home, the flickering lights cast menacing shadows across the walls, and I made a choice that would haunt me. I grabbed a half-empty bottle of cheap wine from the kitchen table, its acrid smell hitting me like a punch to the gut. I drank straight from the bottle. The alcohol burned, but it distracted me from my spiraling thoughts. As the room swayed, I stumbled toward the bathroom, the cold, unforgiving tiles chilling my bare feet. The mirror reflected a stranger. My eyes were glassy, and my hair a wild mess. In that moment, I didn't care. I fumbled through the drawers, searching for something, anything to pull me from this world of numbing despair. Then I found it, a small forgotten box packed away in a corner, dusty and unassuming. Inside lay items from my late grandmother, things I had been too scared to part with. Among them were her old, cracked leather gloves. They smelled of musty earth and faded memories, but also hinted at something deeper, something I had never explored. In a reckless haze, I slipped them on. The moment the worn leather enveloped my fingers, I felt a surge of power. A perverse thrill ran through me. I remembered her stories about being a strong woman in a weak world. I wanted to embody that strength in the most twisted way. I stepped outside, the chilly Ohio air biting at my exposed skin, and wandered the darkened streets, shadows stretching ominously around me. I don't know what drove me, but I ended up at the local park, the moon casting a ghostly glow on the empty swings. There I spotted him, a kid on a bicycle, maybe 12 years old, riding alone. My heart thumped loudly in my chest. I approached him, fueled by a strange mix of adrenaline and dread. "Hey!" I called out, my voice cracking in the still night. He stopped, startled. His innocent bright eyes and naive smile contrasted with the power I felt coursing through me. In that moment, I could be anyone, the teacher, the authority figure, or something far more sinister. Before I knew it, I was cornering him, whispering incoherent things, my heart racing as I reveled in the control I had. His expression morphed from confusion to fear, and in that split second, I realized how far I had strayed from my humanity. I backed away, the weight of what I had almost done crashing over me like a tidal wave. Breathless and horrified, I felt the gloves slide off my fingers, discarded like my sanity. I ran. I can still feel the cold sweat on my back, the echoes of his frightened breath haunting me. I locked myself in my room, the suffocating silence pressing against me. And for days, the guilt clawed at my insides. I was no longer that model citizen. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Now, as I sit here, words spilling out like secrets I can no longer keep, I know I'll carry this stain forever. I may never tell a soul, but the memories will etch themselves into my psyche, a constant reminder of the darkness lurking beneath the surface. I am a teacher, a community member, but also a vessel of shame, forever wrestling with the question, who am I really?